What's up, everybody?
All right. Now, what's up, everybody?
We
Very
are
good.
on. All right. Lots of familiar faces. Welcome to the 18 Strong Q&A, where we're going to talk a little bit about some stretching and mobility, and I'm sure we'll go off into all other kinds of little rabbit hole directions like we normally do. What's new, Rhino? What's going on with you?
Just checking some questions that people have sent in. A lot of good ones. Yeah, some pretty cool. Yeah, it's been stretching week, which I like for everyone who's been keeping up with the emails. What's the PGA event this weekend?
It's something down in Mexico. I forget the name of it. So here, this is kind of cool. Adam Long sent me a text on Wednesday. It is the Mexican Open at Vidanta. So Adam Long sends me this picture, which is a scorecard of the Pro-Am. And
Yep.
if you notice at the top, I marked out the golfers' names, but
Okay.
those four amateur golfers, the first 9 holes they play with Adam Long, the second 9 holes they play with Hayden Buckley.
Get out of town.
Yeah. So Adam sent it to me. He's like, "Hey, how lucky are these amateurs?" Like, man, that's like the 18 strong dream Pro-Am lineup right there.
Who
So
wants to play with Tiger Woods?
That was pretty cool. Hayden was 5 under today. He's on the first page of the leaderboard so far. So a nice little 66. So
Sure.
I didn't see if
What's that like?
I just saw that on the Golf Channel. So I don't know where Adam is or if he's teed off yet. Excuse me.
Yeah,
got a little tickle in my throat this week, so I apologize
boy.
if I'm coughing into the mic today.
Can't wait. You got the watered down COVID.
Oh, no, my daughter had a respiratory deal last week. Fully tested, no COVID, no strep, no flu, none of that jazz. Just a good old fashioned cold.
No, see, I don't believe that. It's either COVID or nothing.
They still are out there.
Huh. Yeah, Adam Long's even now.
How far in is he?
I just had to have him up top. My favorites are up top. Hayden's still -5.
Yeah, he's done. All right, quick little plug. Not that this is an ad or anything, but I just got this new Linksole long sleeve. It's the Aldo, ALDO. This thing's awesome. So go check out the long sleeve Aldo shirt. It's kind of like it's just like a performance shirt, but I don't know. It's just very comfy. Well, you got the t-shirts and you wear those all the time. Yeah, that's the Goat Hill, but this is more like the dry fit, whatever.
Right. I like the hooded t-shirts have become my spring uniform.
Yeah, those are, I dig those as well.
And
no,
if you
that was just a shameless plug.
I was gonna say, and if you go to 18strong.com/Linksole, what do you get? 20% off, I think.
20% off everything in your cart.
That shameless plug went to ridiculous. Shameless plug.
But seriously, good shirt. All right. Where do we want to start here?
Good transition.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it's been a stretching week, how we all screw it up. And I know there's probably a little bit of confusion because we've been trying to think. We kind of like, we don't have that flexibility, but it's like we tell people you don't want flexibility. What you need is mobility. And where those things get too intertwined, and then it's okay, well, what am I stretching for? What am I, daily motioning for? So I think that we just kind of start there. Like, what's the difference, flexibility, mobility, and then between the stretching and like the daily motion type stuff?
Yeah. So I think the easiest way to describe mobility is simply range of motion with control is probably the simplest definition. So having control over the amount of motion that you have in a specific joint or multiple joints at the same time. Whereas flexibility is really just how far can I stretch something? Not necessarily under control, but could be how far can I physically use either an apparatus or even kind of push up on a doorway or something like that and stretch into a certain position, or how far can somebody stretch me? We've got these businesses now, like here in St. Louis, we have one called Stretch You, which you literally go in there and you lay on a table and they stretch you in different directions, and then they do a little massage. I don't remember if they do the massage first or after. It would make sense if they did the massage first, just with like a little massager wand, and then they stretch you out and then off on your way. And so that right there is flexibility at its finest, worst, however you want to say it, where they're literally just kind of passively putting you into a position. And don't get me wrong, it feels great for
Right.
somebody to stretch you and you know, push on you, tug on you this way and that. It feels fantastic. But the lasting effects of something like that are going to be pretty minimal if there's no kind of follow-up from that. Or like we talk about in our video this week, you know, because I've actually gone to one of these places. I did, they do cryotherapy there as well. So when I had a chance to try the cryotherapy, they let me do a full stretching session. And the problem that I had with it was that they laid me on the table, they kind of wanded my back, they wanded my legs, and then they would stretch into different directions and angles and would hold for, you know, 10, 15 seconds, then move on to a different direction. And then afterwards it was like, okay, get on up and see ya. We'll see you next week if, you know, if you're on their program. And
Right.
it's one of those things where, yeah, just keep coming in because it feels great. But there's no real lasting effect. We talked about it in the video this week, if you guys haven't watched it, about how if you're doing a passive stretch, that's what you would call a passive stretch. You can do it on yourself, or you can have somebody else passively stretch you. There's a time period that you want to hold in order to allow your brain, your muscles, and really your nervous system to relax, and then allow the tissues to lengthen a little bit. But those tissues aren't going to stay lengthened unless you do something to then help them understand that new length. So that's where some of the strengthening will come in. That's where mobility really shines. Mobility is then taking that new motion and building some strength around it. So now you can control the muscle, the joint, or whatever into that new range of motion. That's where mobility increases, or that's where an increase in mobility becomes effective, because you now are teaching your muscles by taking that new length, doing some exercises to strengthen. And then now you're teaching your brain and your body, like, okay, now I understand how to handle that new range of motion.
This is okay. So is that like stretch you? Is that more of a people going like as a massage just to relax type thing, or how are they presenting it as more of that, or as like a performance based thing?
No, I think they're presenting it more as, we're gonna basically help improve your body. We're gonna make you feel better. We're gonna, you know, make you more flexible. We're gonna do all these different things. But I would venture to say, I would love to see kind of some before and afters of people, you know, that have gone through this program for a month, but take some measurements of them cold, doing, you know,
Right.
some of the standard flexibility tests, do that for a month, and then find them again when they're cold and see if there's any real improvements. Now it might be something where, just like we talk about all the time, once you start doing something like that, it makes you start to feel a little bit better. You feel, you know, there's obviously going to be chemical reactions and things like that going on too, that are going to help make you feel better, especially during that time period.
Mhm.
But then that might be a catalyst for them to start doing a little bit more. Maybe they start walking a little bit more. Maybe they're doing that after their round of golf, and, you know, it just helps to alleviate some of the pain. And then maybe now they're starting to do some more exercises. So there's different things that they might snowball into. But it'd be an interesting study, just straight. And I'm sure if I really looked up a study on passive stretching over the last 5 years or so, we could find some research on that of,
Right.
you know, what gains did they really experience, and then what would be the difference if you did passive stretching with some active range of motion exercises afterwards. What would the difference be if you just did some strengthening exercises into full ranges of motion? You know, so there's different ways that we could kind of look at what's most effective. But, you know, most of the time we try to utilize our strengthening exercises in those full ranges of motion to help facilitate some of that stretching. So you're getting a little bit of that strengthening as well as the lengthening.
Yeah, I always like a deadlift. I'm never quite sure if it's working because it feels like it's just stretching. But then 2 days later, when the DOM set in, I'm like, okay, then that was working.
Well, yeah,
When
I
you're
mean, when you get the stretch, you know that that's typically the sign that you're in the right position, that you're actually hinging and you're getting your hamstrings to, and again, your hamstrings get into that taut position because you're hinging, your pelvis is rotating, and if you're getting that stretch, that means that you're not flexing at your back, which is what we do not want to do.
right,
If you're able to keep a good solid spine and hinge properly from your hips, you're going to get that stretch in the hips or stretch in the hamstrings. You'll feel your glutes, as you kind of get into the full hinge position, and then also possibly at the very top when you're really squeezing your glutes into that full extension at the top.
gotcha. So let me ask you this: what do they get you for? Is it a half an hour session, hour session, 45 minutes?
This was a couple of years ago. It was a complimentary deal for me to go try out the cryotherapy. It was when I did the episode on the cryotherapy chambers, and the guy that was the rep for the cryotherapy, he kind of hooked me up over there. I have no idea what it costs. I think they're 15-minute sessions.
Okay.
It depends on what package you get. You can go in and just get stretched. You can go in and get the massage and the stretch. And then I honestly haven't really looked into it, but to me, it's a business that is really running on the fact that it simply feels good when they do it. I'm sure there's plenty of testimonials of people saying it's made me feel so much better and this and that. But as far as from improving their actual performance and mobility and ability to actually move better, I'd be interested to see some real statistics on that.
Right. I don't know if you remember this. I sent you I'd been retargeted from being on some site, and it was like one of those info products, and it was like a do the splits in 30 days type thing.
Yeah,
And it
like
was like
hyperbolic stretching or something.
yeah, that might have actually been what it was called. And like the guy, you could see all the guys like getting in these like NHL goalie positions. And I just sent you a text. I'm like, this couldn't possibly hurt your golf game, could it? Or this couldn't not make you better. And I think your answer was, you're an idiot. This doesn't do anything for golfers type thing.
Yeah.
Affectionately, I said that.
Your video was excellent this week on that stretching.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Very helpful, very informative.
Good. Jim knows some stuff.
Yeah, we are. We're going to start doing. Our intention is to do a video a week and to really kind of find some different topics like that where there's either some confusion or we know we can explain some things, because obviously on these calls it's hard to show some of the things that we've talked about. And so I think we've been doing you guys a disservice by not providing visuals to some of this stuff. And so we decided let's just get back on the YouTube train and get back on shooting some videos once a week. So that's where it's really going to be helpful from you guys if you could continue to give us some great questions that you guys would love to see explained a little bit further, or even follow-ups to these calls that we have, where a little bit more of a visual demonstration might be something that would be really, really helpful. So sometimes it's hard for us to kind of think of what you guys want, but when you guys give us the questions, that will definitely help us out.
Well, I like the fact that it was concise, and to the point, and you kept it, I think, within 10 minutes. So it's easy time-wise to watch. And you get a lot out. I watched it twice.
Awesome.
So, yeah. Really
That's
good.
the plan. That's the plan to keep them. In fact, when I told Ryan it was 9 minutes, he's like, "Come on, man, can't you shorten it up?" Like,
Figure it out.
yeah.
Yeah.
But we'll get there. We'll get there. I got to get my YouTube chops going again. It's been a while
Yeah,
since I shot
that's
videos
good.
like that. But yeah, back to that stretching, the Jean-Claude Van Damme kind of position that guy was in,
Yeah.
hyperbolic stretching or whatever that was called. I think another one of my responses was, well, first of all, why would you want to do that? Like, why does any grown man need to do a full-on splits?
Right.
Unless you're in martial arts or something like that, or, maybe you're somebody that does like water skiing or something like that. Like that could definitely be a very beneficial thing. You get thrown around, or maybe a snow skier. So I don't want to totally, say it's not worth looking into, because there are times when maybe you do put yourself in a position where yeah, there might be a situation where I'm skiing down the hill or I'm water skiing and my ski gets thrown and I get kind of flipped and, my legs are getting thrown apart. And that's where, your nervous system kind of kicks in. And if you've kind of trained for your body to be able to handle stress at those extreme ranges of motion, then that guy would be in a much better position than I would be if he was,
Right.
accidentally thrown into a full blown splits. But as far as for your golf game, do you need to be able to do the full on splits? I see no specific reason why. Not saying that you don't need to have mobility and flexibility that allows your adductors to stretch, but that's a little bit extreme. But it's funny because that, from what we've seen in our research, that product has sold a lot.
Yeah, they sold a bunch. Yeah, it seems like it's more of a parlor trick.
Yeah.
Like, hey guys, check this out. Like, oh
Agreed.
man, neat.
Agreed.
Pick up tons of chicks because you can do the splits like that.
I don't think it works that way.
What?
Marina's shaking her head no.
Oh, all right. I don't have a ton of money, so I'm going to have to figure out something else.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kendra.
Mm.
Cool. Yeah. So that kind of explains the mobility versus flexibility type stuff, which again then kind of begs the question. All week we've been talking about the what can I think? Where your brain stops you.
Oh, the protective response.
God, thank God. Yes, the protective response. Right. It's like, then the question becomes, okay, why are we trying to override this thing that our brain is doing to protect us?
Well, I think it's our natural inclination to want to get better at something, right? We want to, if we know that our hamstrings are tight, we want to loosen up our hamstrings. If we know that our, something on our body isn't moving the way that it is supposed to move, we want to try to fix it. Many times we don't know the right way of going about doing that. Now, I'm a big believer that our bodies are designed so incredibly that there are systems and checks and balances put into place that we, are unaware of, that are for the greater good, that is really meant to protect us in the long run. And that protective response of the stretch is one of them. We don't think about it because we think, well, what the heck? Why am I tight? Why can I not move into this position? But we often don't realize, well, hey, if that muscle, for the hamstrings, we talked about this with one of the guys that I'm working with right now, super, super tight hamstrings. But then when we did just some tests and just kind of watching him move and some of the pain that he has, realized that his core stability is really, really lacking, primarily from him neglecting his lower body strengthening exercises because he had back pain. So he kind of stopped doing the lower body stuff. So his midsection, his trunk, his core is really weak. And from my perspective, his tight hamstrings are helping to helping to stabilize his pelvis so he doesn't put himself in a jeopardizing position. And so that's kind of a chronic ongoing protective response. Now with our stretching, when we're trying to improve our motion through stretching, we're trying to literally lengthen, or feel like we're lengthening the muscles. When we go to do that and we push into that stretch. So again, a hamstring stretch is kind of the easiest way to really think about this. Say you're, like in the video, I threw my foot up on the box and I'm just kind of like leaning forward and stretching out the hamstring. If I push into that right away, the initial response is a quick contraction, actually. So we call it the stretch contract reflex, where you stretch on something and it's going to contract a little bit. In fact, you can use that as a bit of a technique in your weightlifting, in your resistance training. So when you're going into a press at the very bottom, not bouncing it off your chest, but feeling that little stretch at the bottom and using that to press on the way up. Same with when you go to the bottom of the squat. You get to the bottom, you feel a little bit of that stretch at the bottom and use that to help propel you upwards.
Gotcha.
When you go to stretch into your hamstring or to do that hamstring stretch and you go to stretch, your muscle's naturally going to tighten up. And so what do? We then start to push harder. We start to grunt and grimace and, and it's like we're fighting ourselves. And that protective response is there because your body knows like, hey, I don't want this to move any further right now because you might hurt yourself if you go any further. And you're saying, well, I'm going to keep pushing. It's like, well, I'm going to keep pushing back. So we're not, it's just kind of like, a tug of war then. And it's not until we start to, again, like we talked about in the video, start to breathe and relax that we start to turn off that fight or flight. That's what when you push real hard, you start to kick on that sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight. And so your body's tugging with itself. And until we can start to breathe and relax and feel the tension kind of drain out of our body and get out of that fight or flight state and try to shift more into what we would call the parasympathetic, which is more the relax and calm, that's when the brain starts to say, okay, I'm going to let it chill out a little bit. I'm not going to fight as hard. I'm not quite ready to let go, but I'm going to just kind of like, we're going to hang here. We're just going to see. And then that's where that 2-minute window, the longer you hold it into that and you get to close to that 2-minute window, that's when it's finally is like, all right, it kind of it builds up that trust. And then once you get there, now you can even start to feel yourself kind of relax into more range of motion. And then I don't know the exact numbers on, how long after that, how much benefit there is to continue to hold for another minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever. But the technique that we learned in the FRC, which is Dr. Andrea Ospina, and he's become kind of the king of mobility, really, when it comes to a lot of this stuff, is doing kind of that passive long 2-minute stretch. And then once you get to that position, then you can start to do like a little bit of contraction of the hamstrings and starting to work on pushing into that position and then almost kind of pulling into changing the angles a little bit too. It's kind of hard. That'd be a good video for me to do. As a matter of fact, is kind of what do you do after that 2-minute stretch to then work on teaching the hamstring. Okay, now you're in this new range of motion. So you've got a little extra movement here, right? Now we need to teach you how to build a little bit of strength so you can control this range of motion as well. And so when you start to do kind of those, some isometric or some resistance there, you then start to build up strength around the joint and not just the hamstrings, but all the muscles around there. No muscle works in isolation. So anytime you're doing any of these movements and exercises and stretches and everything, we always talk about it in regards to one muscle or this muscle or that muscle, but there's so many different things that are involved in that. It's all the connective tissue, it's the joints, it's the tendons, it's the muscles, it's the fascia. I know that we had a question on fascia. So it's all of those things that are combined into this. And so by allowing that protective response to diminish and then starting to work on a little bit of controlled resistance, isometric contractions, those kind of things, you're going to start to build up the body's awareness of a little control and strength in that new range.
So is there a number, like a percent where, let's say you're touching your toes and you can get this far, and then after 2 minutes, obviously you start to sink in and get a little bit further. Is it like you get a 10% more longer stretch or 20, or what would kind of be a ballpark number be?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I don't really know that there's a percentage there's definitely not one that I'm aware of, because some people will see a lot. I've had some people that come in and they're 6 inches from touching their toes. And then we do a few things we work on, really just even, it's interesting because sometimes if you can get somebody to work on even a little bit of core training, and it's almost sometimes like turning on a light switch where, like this guy that I had the other day, if we did some core strengthening, sometimes a person like that just hasn't used their core muscles, building up the whole corset around their trunk. And you teach them a couple little stabilization exercises and you go through a couple things, then all of a sudden it's almost like that protective response again diminishes because it knows like, oh, wait, I've got these other muscles now. They're able to help me stabilize. And then you take that person down into that same stretch again. And now they've got another inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, where they're almost touching their toes to the floor. So it kind of depends on the person's body, depends on the deficiency, the limitation of that movement. But I don't know that there's an exact percentage necessarily.
Gotcha. And you should not stretch until you're warm, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the idea is the simplest way is, we use the taffy example.
Right.
If your body, not that your muscles are ever frozen or, stiff and hard like that, but yeah, it's better to have your muscles and your blood flowing before you just go and start stretching on cold muscle. Part of it, again, is just, kind of getting the body to relax a little bit. Blood flow heats up the tissue. That's going to make it a little bit more pliable. And that's going to allow you to be more effective with that. That kind of leads into the whole idea of warming up before sport. So warming up before golf, warming up before playing soccer, especially before soccer. You start to see some teams doing it well, some teams doing it the old school way, right? Where, you just see a team and they're all bunched up and they all just kind of hang down and try to touch their toes for 20 seconds. And then they come back up and then they do the standing quad stretch. They're holding one hand on one guy's shoulder and they're doing this quad stretch for 20 seconds. Whereas then you've got some of these other teams that are, doing basically warm-ups. They're maybe taking a jog around the field or jogging back and forth. And then they're doing like some hopping stuff and skipping stuff. And they're doing some little bounces. And then they're doing more of an active dynamic movement type of a warm-up. That's what you should be doing before some sort of sport. You shouldn't, these 2-minute stretches, this is not to be done right before your round of golf. This is to be done more when you're working on improving your motion or improving some deficiency that you have. I tend to like to do it either on an off day or towards the end of a workout where, I've already kind of done the workout, done the heavy lifting, done the strengthening kind of stuff. And then towards the end of the workout, or even maybe mixed in a little bit towards the end of the workout in between some different sets, then working on some of the mobility stuff, because again, your body's heated up, your joints are moving, you've got the synovial fluid moving, you've got, all these different things in your favor. And now you can then work on getting into some of these positions a little bit easier. Your brain's not on such high alert. But before golf or sport, that's when you want to get the body moving a little bit. You want to take it through the motions that you're going to be doing during that game, that round, whatever it is. And I'm a big fan of what we call priming, doing a little bit of resistance. You could do some fast resistance kind of stuff with the rubber bands. We've got a little priming routine in the app, in our golfers warm up, where, you're kind of turning those muscles on again. You're saying, hey, these are the motions these are the muscles, these are the motions that we're going to be doing during this round of golf, during this sport, whatever it is. Let's get them ready to perform. If you're just going and you're doing these long, lazy stretches, it's meant to kind of calm you down. Like we said, we have to get in this calm state to do those stretches. That's not what you want on the first tee box. You don't want to feel like you're loosey goosey on the tee box, like you just walked out of a massage. You want to have that athletic, almost like tingling energy ready to go. Not where you're exhausted and completely tired. And, I've seen some crazy golf warm-ups, people doing jump lunges on the tee box and like getting down on the ground and doing all these different exercises. Like, you just want to make sure that your body's ready to perform for what is about to happen. So get the hips moving, get the trunk moving a little bit, get the shoulders moving. The EFDs are a perfect little warm up, and then, get some swings in, get some rotation in. And if you have a rubber band, doing some of those things. So I love the pull aparts. I love hooking on the golf cart or hooking on something where you can do some rotating presses, some rotating rows. And then I usually will get into like a little, almost like a split squat position and kind of do a couple of those just to get the hips, making sure they're moving, and even some rotation type stuff.
Oh yeah. So Marie asked a good question. She's wondering whether it's okay to do the EFTs or daily motion right after the 2-minute cold shower, which obviously you're cold. Does it make a difference, do you think? And then also, people think that she's weird when she uses resistance bands on the range. You'll
I
see more of that. You'll just be a pioneer as
I
well.
know. I still want to create like the 18 strong, like a pole that goes on every driving range. You know, every driving range has the clock tower. I want
Right.
to have the 18 strong pole that has resistance bands there, maybe has the crossover symmetry hooked on it, where it's just kind of a natural thing. Like, hey, I'm going to go warm up at the 18 strong station. There, you know, you're doing your resistance bands.
Right.
Nobody thinks you look silly anymore because everybody does it. As far as the EFDs after the cold shower, I have no qualms with that whatsoever. First of all, because the cold shower, one thing that does is that helps promote blood flow. So in the cold shower, you're hitting your body with that cold, and the idea is your body kind of freaks out that you're getting cold, so it starts to shunt all of the blood towards the organs, and that's why you'll start to, you can start to get cold hands, cold feet, and everything, because your body starts to kind of conserve the blood, where it's constricting your vessels because it's trying to protect what's inside, the most important things, right? That's why hypothermia, you end up you lose your fingers and your toes first, because the blood flow stops going there, because it needs to go to your heart and your intestines and everything in order for you to just survive. So then what happens is, once you get out of that shower, or there were times in the winter where I would, even after the cold, I would then go back to a hot shower, because I have cold fingers and toes a lot. And I'm, again, kind of trying to work on that with some of the Wim Hof stuff. But I would notice that after, if I ended on the cold and then I just left to go to work, some of my fingers would be numb for a while still. So I would go back to, I'd turn back on the hot water and just get the hot water back on. But even without that, once you turn the cold shower off and you get back into normal temperature, the blood starts to dissipate out into your body again. So it's almost, that's what cryotherapy does too. And that's why they say it's so good, is because it's almost like this shunting of blood, and then boom, this vasodilation of all your vessels opening up to get the blood flow out to the periphery. And so it's actually going to then kind of get a lot of the blood where it needs to go. So by you doing the EFDs, that's a great way to then say, hey, let's get the blood flow going in my neck. Let's get the blood flow going in my shoulder. So you're then promoting that blood flow to get to those different places.
That makes sense. And then so Elliot was back to my, what's the percent increase if you're like touching your toes? And so Elliot makes a really good point. He said, it depends on the cause of the toe touch dysfunction. And so, like exactly what you said,
Yeah.
It's not just your hammies. There's all kinds of stuff going on there.
Right. That's a great point, Elliot. Yeah, I mean, it could be, there could be some postural stuff there. It could be, that the spinal curve is, they've got a lot of lordosis, kind of that sway back, or they've got a really flat back, or their pelvis is tucked under, all kinds of different things. And everybody is so different that it's hard to, give specific numbers there.
Oh yeah. I've got like a couple off-topic questions, and you want to go back to this to kind of change it up a little bit here, buddy?
Yeah, bring it on.
Bring it on. Okay, so actually, I'll slowly segue into this. So, is yoga a real benefit to golfers, or are golf-specific stretches enough? Do you hear of many tour players who subscribe to yoga or Pilates for part of their workout routine? Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's definite benefit to yoga. I think that aside from even just the flexibility, mobility stuff that we talk about, there's a lot of the breathing stuff is really brought forth in a lot of yoga practice. And so, we've talked a lot on the podcast and even in these calls about not just the importance of breathing, but, just kind of like quieting the mind, quieting the brain, getting kind of in touch with a little bit of that mindfulness when you're out on the golf course. And I think that yoga, more so than probably any practice, really taps into that when you're, it depends on the kind of yoga, depends on the instructor, depends on, what you're doing. And there's so many different types of yoga that, again, it's hard to give a definitive answer on this one. Yes, golf specific stretches are going to hit specific targeted areas of what you need as a golfer. And sometimes a yoga class or practice is going to put you in positions that maybe you don't necessarily want to get into. Maybe they're going to put you in areas where you don't necessarily need to work on that piece of mobility or flexibility, however you want to describe it. There is golf for yoga, or yoga for golf, right?
Oh, yeah.
Catherine Roberts, we know her, and she works with a ton of athletes, a lot of golfers specifically, and has trained a ton of yoga instructors on specifics for golf. I have not been through a yoga for golf program or session, so I don't know specifically, what that looks like. That would be a good crossover of the two, you would think, of just golf specific exercises and yoga. But yes, there is benefit to doing yoga, but again, it just depends on what kind you're doing. I've done the only real yoga that I've ever participated in is we used to do a class when I had the gym a few years ago, and there were a lot of hockey players that would come in. And so we had an instructor come in, and it was a very athletic based yoga. So it wasn't nearly as much of the breathing techniques. It was a lot of positions and holds, and getting into working on some core strengthening type of things, which was great. I invited a lot of our golfers to that same class because of the stuff that we were doing. It was great for the core, was great for opening up the hips, the thoracic spine, all of those different areas. So it can definitely be very beneficial, but you just have to have to try it out and be careful that you're not putting yourself in compromising positions that are going to maybe cause issues with, hip impingement or excessive back extension, things like that golfers can struggle with.
All right. Namaste, Jeff. Namaste. So here's what I've noticed. And this would be a good question for you. I probably should have asked you over the weekend. When you have, I don't necessarily call it an injury, but how my left shoulder, it kind of comes and goes. So I started to just kind of stop being a big baby and just started working through it, and it fixes it like way, way faster. Like, I know you've kind of told me, let pain be your guide, but to what extent? I wish I could qualify a little bit more. It's like, so it's I don't know what you call this muscle right here. Part of your,
like right under your collarbone. Well, you got your deltoid is kind of right up here, but probably maybe even your subclavian, I believe. And then your
that's
pec
right.
and all that stuff.
I do know what a deltoid is. Subclavian, I don't know, but so that one, it hurt to the point where people kept asking me why I keep rubbing my shoulder, and then I just did my normal workouts all week, and now it's completely gone. So is that? I guess that could be any number of things. A tweak, a strain, and a throwaway line, but it's I've heard it in the past. So, what's kind of your thought on working your way out of an injury?
Yeah, that's a fine line. General rule of thumb is if it's like a pinching type pain, like if it feels like a mechanical kind of pinching, and we say this in the EFDs, like if you're moving, so we would call like a closing angle pain. Like when I'm doing my neck circles, if I'm turning this way and I'm getting a pain on this side, so I'm closing this angle, that's typically going to be kind of an impinging, like a pinching kind of pain. If I'm raising my arm and I'm getting pain, kind of in the front of the shoulder here, sometimes even in the back of the shoulder, a lot of times that is a closing angle, or that's a pinching pain, like an impinging type pain.
Gotcha.
And you want to stay away from that. If I'm doing my neck circles and I get a discomfort over here, it's probably going to be a little bit more of a stretching type of an issue. Could be related to the joints in the neck, but a lot of times it's going to be from the stretching side of things. And then you have like your muscle strains and things like that. Typically you're going to know, like you're going to feel your muscle strain, right? Like when Murphy had his quad injury, or if anybody's had a hamstring strain or anything like that, that is a pain that you're not going to be able to push through.
Right.
If it's kind of just some general soreness, it's not a sharp stabbing pain, I subscribe, and it's kind of funny because as therapists, fitness professionals, we're typically usually the worst ones when it comes to like going to see a doctor or, like just kind of trying to work our way through it.
Right.
But I typically subscribe to the program of if it's hurting, try to work through it a little bit, give it a few days. And if it doesn't start to dissipate, then that's when you might want to start to look into, okay, what's going on here. My wife, as soon as something starts to nag, she's like, oh my God, what's going on? My shoulder hurts. And it's like, it's an immediate, like, I got to fix this. For me, it's like, I wake up with 4 different things hurting, here and there. And then it's like, I'm 43 years old. I know that things are going to not feel great. And in a couple of days, it'll probably go away. And if it doesn't, then I'll start to worry about it.
Right.
But typically, the sharp stabbing pains, anything where you get kind of getting into that pinching kind of emotion, those are the things that need to be kind of addressed and worked on or worked around. So for instance, if you have pain with your shoulder going up overhead, I will steer my clients away from any overhead stuff for the time being, try to really work on some rotation, work on some stabilization of the shoulder, do some different exercises in that pain-free range of motion. And sometimes that will help to get the muscles around that joint to work in a little better fashion, work in a little more sync, and give it time for that inflammation or irritation to die down. And then test it out every now and then, see if it's getting a little bit better. And then if the pain has dissipated a little bit, maybe start to work into that range of motion just a little, but really working on the stabilization in those pain-free ranges of motion is kind of the way to start. So shoulder impingement is a classic case. A lot of people will have this, what we call the painful arc, which is kind of like right in this motion.
That's exactly how I would describe it. That like front lateral or front raise type thing.
And then really probably once you get up here, it's kind of like, oh, it's not so bad up there, but it's right in here. And so that's kind of a mechanical thing. And so it's your shoulder blade and your clavicle. Your shoulder blade has this little arch on the side here called your acromion. And if your rotator cuff's not working properly and your lats and some of the other muscles around the shoulder joint and the shoulder girdle aren't working right, as you raise up, it's allowing a pinching of those muscles right under that arch. And so doing this is just going to be like banging your head on the wall. But then coming in, doing some strengthening of the rotator cuff, some mid-scapular muscles, that's going to then make that shoulder blade glide and move a little bit better. And that's going to then kind of open up some space. It's going to take the pressure off. And so working in those non-painful ranges of motion is going to be your best bet to start out. And then hopefully, even like with the neck circles, if somebody's doing neck circles and they get a pinch on one side, which we've probably all had, as you get to that pinch, I just work your way around it without pushing through it. And sometimes by doing that, doing your shoulder circles, your arms and everything, that ends up kind of working itself out. Sometimes just movement is the best medicine and things just kind of work themselves out a little bit.
Nice. Yeah. The laissez-faire, just pretend it doesn't hurt.
Pretend it doesn't exist until you have to go to the ER.
That's good advice from a physical therapist. I appreciate it. Now, Shepard said to keep my elbows close to my ribs on the bench press and push-ups. I mean, Shepard, the amount of weight I'm throwing up, you don't even know, man. It's hundred of pounds. Okay, so that's good advice for the injury stuff. Okay, so there's more of a supplement thing. Is there a benefit to using a creatine supplement for a 60-year-old following the 18 Strong strength and mobility programs? I'm looking to optimize strength for golf and good health versus more serious weightlifting or professional athlete. I currently use whey protein shake post-workout. If creatine is viewed as helpful, is there a significance as to what time of day it's taken?
I am not going to pretend to be a creatine expert. I know that there are a lot of studies that have been done on creatine, touting a lot of the benefits. I take creatine on a fairly regular basis as well. But I don't really feel comfortable giving a whole lot of advice regarding that for specific individuals. Just not necessarily my place. If we did have somebody like Tony on that knows the research a lot more, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable giving a direct response. But there is a lot of positive benefits for creatine as far as, just helping with maintaining energy through your strength training sessions. I have no idea if there's a proper time of day to take it. When I personally take mine, normally in the morning before I leave the house, I will fill this guy up with water and some greens, and then I'll put a little, I think it's a teaspoon of creatine powder in there, as well as a scoop of that collagen protein, just as a way to get the greens in, get a little extra protein, and then to get the creatine in there. Do I personally notice a huge difference taking the creatine? I can't say that I have. I just know that there are benefits known for me to take it. So take that for what it is.
Gotcha. Hey, do you know, or have you noticed, especially since, as you were getting to the end of the forge and kind of how you're starting to get your nutrition dialed in, does it help with your like appetite suppressing by drinking like a shake in the morning with the greens and the protein or whatever, or is that completely separate? Because I know, like after workout, if I do like a protein shake, I'm not as hungry a little bit later.
Yeah, I mean, the protein's definitely going to satiate you as far as you're getting protein in, which your body then has to process, and protein is a very dense macronutrient that's why proteins and fats tend to satiate you and keep you more fulfilled for longer as opposed to carbohydrates. So yeah, taking your post-workout shake will definitely help prolong you for a longer period of time. And that's often what I will take, like on a morning or a day where I'm super, super busy. And I know that I've got several clients and a bunch of stuff, and I'm not going to have a chance to sit down and eat. I'll do a protein shake just because I know that that'll hold me over for the time being.
Gotcha. And what greens do you put in your water?
I either use the Designs for Health or the First Form. The Designs for Health, I'm looking at it right now. It's called Essential Greens, and the First Form, I forget what the name of those greens are, but it's their greens product. They have a greens and a reds product.
Gotcha. Yeah, Joe Rogan is always pimping the athletic greens.
Athletic greens. Yep.
Do you think that helps with your appetite too? When you're getting all that?
No, not necessarily. No, I mean, I just kind of look at that as a little hydration with a little boost in it.
Gotcha.
Some extra good stuff in there.
Yeah, I know it's funny when we're talking about protein keeping you satiated, where we're over at Gina's, so Jeff's sister, and I just picked up a little like slider off the barbecue pit, and I just ate it. And you called it like a little meat cookie. I'm like, yeah, because that keeps you full for way longer. So it sounds ridiculous to like grab I even did today. We had some leftover taco meat, and I took like 2 spoonfuls of that before the call because I was a little hungry, rather than a handful of grapes, because I know that handful of grapes is going to make me hungry now. And right now I'm not hungry because of my meat cookie.
Well, it's funny. I can remember when we were kids, one of our aunt's sister-in-laws, Donna, she was a hairdresser, and she always had a jar of peanut butter on her at her station, and she would take a spoonful of peanut butter like once or twice a day. And as a kid, I thought that was the grossest thing ever. I'm like, how can you eat that with not having jelly and bread around it? Right. But now, I mean, I could sit and eat a whole thing of peanut butter with a spoon. But sometimes I will do that if I'm running out of the house in the morning. Say I'm going to play golf and I haven't had time to really eat breakfast or anything. And Ryan and I will go play Ruth Park 9 holes on Friday mornings, pretty early in the morning, 6:30 tee time sometimes. And it's like, man, I just don't have time to do anything. I'll just grab a banana, big old scoop of peanut butter, and throw that in, because I know that that'll at least get me through for the next couple hours, and then can have a breakfast or mid-morning kind of eating session then.
Oh yeah, and by the way, Donna was always in very good shape, or she still is in good shape. So yeah, she was ahead of her time.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
it does seem gross to have peanut butter around a bunch of hair.
Yeah, I don't know if it was actually at her station or if it was in the back, and she. I just remember either my mom or my sister saying, "Oh yeah, she just goes and grabs a scoop of peanut butter." I'm like, "Oh, gross," but now it sounds like heaven.
It's pretty awesome.
For
Okay,
the
so
record, Smucker's natural crunchy peanut butter, chunky peanut butter, greatest peanut butter ever.
you have to stir it up.
Got to stir it up. Yeah, all oily
Yeah.
at the top.
I've been drinking, been eating sunflower seed butter. I like that
Oh, yeah.
too.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
staple at our house because one of our kids has Sam is still allergic to peanuts.
A little bit every time, Sam. Okay, so back to the stretching, the protective response. So we know why it's doing it. You can't stretch because your muscles are actually your brain's making them contract. So then just quickly the three things that people are making mistakes and what can you do to overcome that?
Right. So the first one we talked about, just holding it longer. 2 minutes is a good number to think of, kind of the magic window. Giving it 2 minutes to chill out, relax. But during that 2 minutes, it's important to, number two, breathe and relax yourself. So the more that you can get your body to relax, the more you're going to feel those muscles start to just kind of let go a little bit. I think you've probably all felt that response where you take a breath in, you let the breath out, and you can feel yourself actually kind of moving a little bit further into that motion, right? That is your body kind of getting into that parasympathetic response where it's starting to let go, it's starting to release the guard. And so you're starting to stretch a little bit more. And then the third piece is, and this is more for the duration to then keep this range of motion, is you need to then strengthen. I'm talking about strengthening of that particular muscle. So if we're talking about the hamstrings, that is not just strengthening into that new range, like at the end of that stretch, but just in general, making sure that muscle group is being trained and that it's strong. We talked about the deadlift. The deadlift is such a great exercise to work on you maintaining strength and gaining strength in the hamstrings as it's lengthening. As you're kind of stretching it out, you're also strengthening it at the same time. There's many times where we are the exercise that we're doing, we're trying to shorten the muscle when we're strengthening it. But with the deadlift, if you're controlling the weight on the way down as well as the way up, you're creating that eccentric strength as you lower the weight. And then you're creating what we call concentric strength when you're then kind of thrusting your hips forward and you're coming back up. But you're getting that lengthening and strengthening at the same time. When you get that strength, your brain starts to realize, okay, I'm comfortable, we're stable, we can handle this. Now, if you were to go with super heavy weight and you start to stretch, your hamstrings are going to do one of two things. They're either going to stop you way short because it knows that your body can't handle going further down into that deadlift, or your hamstrings are going to pop. And, we don't want that to happen. So that's the protective response. So getting that muscle group stronger, but then as we talked about before, getting the muscles surrounding that muscle group stronger. So, for the hamstrings, all the muscles around it, the hip abductors and adductors, the abdominal muscles that are bracing your spine, your hip flexors, all of these things, especially the hip flexors. If you think about yourself lying on the ground and trying to lift your leg straight up, right? We would call this a straight leg raise. If you're trying to raise your leg straight up, you're going to feel that stretch in the back of the hamstrings. Well, the muscles that are raising your leg are in the front of your thigh. They're in your hip flexors, part of your quads. Your quads are keeping your knees straight. The stronger you get those, the more you're going to be able to create this pull upwards. And then your brain is able to say, all right, those muscles are taking control, and the hamstrings can kind of relax a little bit. And then there's this balance of how far can they pull and the hamstrings stretch. And so that's going to help create a little bit of that balance and teach your brain again that you've got more control. There's a safety mechanism in place. And so getting those hip flexors stronger are also going to help with the lengthening of the hamstrings.
Very good. Okay, so we've got 5 minutes left. So next one, what are important exercises for my homework to create speed in my to create speed in my swing is what I'm certain they're trying to get across there. What homework can you do?
Well, we talk about doing, some fast swings. We've talked a lot about super speed clubs. There's another group called Mach 3, which we had on the show a long time ago. We had a couple of the guys from Mach 3 on, and they use some different tools, apparatuses, some ropes and different clubs. And I believe that they have some of their stuff on YouTube as well. So you could look them up also. But basically, to build speed, you have to do some fast things, right? You can't just lift weights slowly and expect your speed to increase much. Now, your speed can increase simply because you're gaining more strength. You're gaining a better stable base to swing off of. But if you don't then try to do things fast, you're going to reach a bit of a cap. So I'm still to this day a big fan of using something like super speed, where you can measure how fast you're swinging, and then you can try to beat whatever your record was the last time. But doing it smart, doing it safely, and not doing it too many times. 2, maybe 3 times a week of working on speed is typically enough, because that's really hard on the nervous system as well. Just kind of, gets the nervous system working really, really hard, even though it's not nearly as intense as lifting super heavy weights. Working on the speed, and you'll find it when you do the super speed clubs, you'll be worn out afterwards. But if you don't have the super speed clubs, mixing in some things like throwing some medicine balls, if you have a wall that you can throw a medicine ball up against, that's a great one. And doing those towards the beginning of your workout. Or here we've got some of those bigger heavy balls. They've got like a Kevlar shell on them, and you can slam them. And so I do like a lot of rotational, like chopping throws. You can do it standing, you can do it kneeling, you can do it half kneeling, those type of things. Taking a rubber band and doing like some fast chops and rotations. I had a guy in here today, and not that we were necessarily working on so much speed as in like really trying to maximize his output for his swing, like to look at the miles per hour, but sometimes mixing in some faster moving exercises. We're all about the tempo and going slow when it counts, and when you're building strength to really create that time under tension. But it's also important to then mix in some different exercises where you do have to move a little bit fast. So today I gave him some stuff towards the end of his workout. So normally we say don't work on speed at the end of your workout because you're going to be tired. So we were working on just moving faster. We did some cable rotations with some speed, just back and forth. But it wasn't necessarily to say, okay, we're really ramping up your miles per hour of your speed. It was more to prepare his body for the fact that you have to rotate quickly, and your muscles just have to be able to know how to do that. I don't know if any of you guys have ever gone out, maybe you've been exercising, doing this, whatever kind of training, but then you go and you do something kind of fast, or, like for Ryan and I, if we still play soccer every now and then, like you go and you try to make a quick little sprint. You haven't done that in a while. It's like, oh, I'm in shape, but I'm not in shape for that. Like my muscles weren't ready to respond that quickly. So I think mixing in some of these kind of things where, you're just creating some faster movement. It's not so much about the time under tension. Your body needs to be able to rotate, and the muscles have to be able to feel like that coil, that back and forth, that like pop, pop, pop. So it doesn't pop, so you don't hurt yourself, you don't strain something, and your body can get used to a little bit of velocity and some of these different positions that maybe you don't feel when you're moving slow under tension.
Gotcha. Cool. So we are right at 3:00. Yeah, good timing there on that last question.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. This was a great turnout. And don't forget, send us whatever questions you have. We're going to continue to shoot some more videos, and then obviously we're going to continue doing these calls as well. And for those of you that have been regulars, we appreciate all the questions you guys have already thrown at us. And I am going to start turning these into podcast episodes. So we'll see how the overall 18 Strong community and crew like these as podcasts, and we'll continue to do that as well. So,
Cool.
all right, we'll catch up with you
Thanks,
guys next week. Stay strong.
Adios.